Hey everybody, this is John with another installment of Think Culture, and today I thought I would do another one of these casual chat videos, and I wanted to talk about the family, the politics of the family as an institution, sort of the ideology of the family, and the family is one of the primary basic institutions, right? People have been talking about the family forever. We've had family lineages forever. It's always been an important part of human culture. Vico thinks that sort of the three main ancient institutions, most ancient institutions are religion, marriage, and burial of the dead. So the family is one of the most ancient institutions, and it's essential in our development of culture and our development of civilization. So it's been a staple in human societies for a long time. And yet there has been this movement of family abolitionism. The idea that we need to abolish the family, that the family is a social evil and needs to be eradicated, right? And people think when you talk about that you're some like loony or whatever, that's not really anything that anybody believes. But that's not really true. I mean, like Fourier and socialism, right? They were family abolitionists. Today, BLM, they said family abolition is one of their one of the main principles of their platform or something. You get people like Sophie Lewis, Marx and Engels in his book on the family. There has been a lot of historically antipathy to the family on the left, and why would there not be? Really, I figured I would go through and just talk about just some of the things that occurred off the top of my head, basically as reasons why they would oppose the family, why it makes sense for them to oppose the family. Intact family, for example, this idea I think that they would say is like coded white. It's coded with whiteness, right? So the idea is racist because black families are much more broken up. There's much more black fatherlessness, etc. So this is seen as a kind of racially charged domain. That's part of why BLM opposes it, basically. The traditional family headed by a man, i.e. we're talking about patriarchy. It's transphobic in the sense that people still think of the family as led in some sense by a man and a woman, right? This binary, which is a problem. It's understood as being between two romantic adults. So it's bigoted against the polyamorous. Adults share tasks in the family. You have to, right, in order to get things done, because kids, they take up a lot of time. And that means that your roles have to be differentiated, right? And that's not feminist enough, because what tasks is the husband going to take on? What tasks is the wife going to take on? Some of that is determined by physiology. It's hierarchical. It's necessarily hierarchical because of the differentiation of tasks, and also because there are parents and there are children. Children are treated as subordinate, and they're supposed to obey rules that are set by their parents. So it trains people, the left would say, has said many times, lots of people on the left, that it trains people for obedience to authority. It's authoritarian. The parent's responsibility for the child looks something like ownership. They can tell the children what to do. They can make them do chores. This is a kind of vestige of slavery, right? And they sometimes even remunerate them, which means that it's also a kind of site for the inculcation of capitalist values and behaviors. Environmentally, it means the reproduction of in the West, people who are the most voracious consumers on the planet, right? They're doing the most damage to the planet. People on the left would say it's not exactly true anymore if you look at China and things like that, but you get the point. Historically, a lot of the left's antagonism to the family is also because it's antithetical to the notion of free love. This is a lot of the sort of 60s radicalism and things like that, and the way that they felt about the family. The family inhibited our natural sexual impulses. It was sexually repressive in their view. It denatures us, right? Sort of the polymorphous perversity of human beings. It teaches, also importantly, the superiority of what is close, right, to one's home, the superiority of that over the foreign. people with kids vote significantly more Republican. They're more right-leaning. It might even be the most correlated thing with these voter trends. I've looked at some maps that seem to suggest that, like the color-coded maps. Having a family also means having some people. It means having some people who are dear to you, who are in a privileged position, and other people who are in a disprivileged position. It teaches you that people are not equal, that you shouldn't treat them equally. This is part of why Plato in the Republic, even, again, this goes back a long ways. I like Plato a lot, and I'm going to do a book on the Republic, but and this story is a little more complicated. But this is why Plato in the Republic talks about abolishing the family, for example. If you're primarily concerned with your family members, you're only secondarily concerned with the good of the polis, with the common good. Your joys and sorrows also become private and individual, right? Your triumphs are shared by a few people rather than like these are social triumphs or something like that, right? So your joys and sorrows, they become private and individual. It separates, right? It takes a chunk of the social world off and it separates it from the rest, and it says this is us, this is them, right? So all of this kind of stuff makes it very clear that the left should ideologically oppose the family. If you find someone on the left who denies that they're hostile to the family, or that the left is hostile to the family at all, just try to discuss some of these issues with them. Take up one of these sort of tracks. And they'll have a very difficult time not agreeing to at least some of it, and therefore not being critical or outright hostile to the family as an institution. The problem with limits for the left, and this generates sort of this Mott and Bailey activity all the time. Like they'll say, no, I don't want totally open borders. No, I don't want to dismantle the family, or whatever the case may be. But the problem is that their vision is what, for example, Darren Beattie has referred to as moral imperialism. He talked about it primarily in terms of things like silence is violence, as a kind of motto of the left, versus don't tread on me, a kind of motto of the right or of conservatives. And he says, silence is violence is obviously aggressive. It compels. It's compelling other people's behavior. It's active. You have to participate, right? Convert or die. Join us or die. You're with us or against us, right? Whereas don't tread on me is passive. And so he said, basically, this is just always going to have to lose, right? When you play it out game theoretically or whatever. But there's another sense, I think, in which the left is morally imperialistic, and that's just that their take on all these issues, their perspective is always just sort of this pure moral demand, and it devours every nuance and every limit. They can't abide by limits. The idea is, it's cruel, it's evil to not let someone into the country. They're suffering, they're seeking a better life, whatever. They have a desire, they have a need. And so it's cruel to stop them. It's cruel to not let them come in and seek their better life, right? To improve their situation. They want to come here and work and provide for their family, whatever. And like that's the principle at work, right? That it's cruel to stop these people. That's their position on the borders, on immigration, is basically it's mean. It feels bad to be mean to people by not letting them come in when they want to, right? It feels mean to not let them do that. That's like the whole basis of their sort of political principle. But so as soon as we say, okay, well, let's try to compromise, we'll let 100,000 in per year, and then we'll stop after that. Well, then, okay, the 100,000 in first case is again a tragedy. It's a moral harm and a tragedy we're inflicting on someone, so we got to let them in too, right? Then the argument just gets pushed back, and now, they want to gain more, basically. As soon as we set some condition or some limit, they have to speak English, right? Then, man, the first guy who shows up that doesn't speak English, it's a tragedy to turn him away. The poor guy doesn't speak English, right? The moral demand, it will be operative in every particular situation. This poor guy doesn't speak English, so just because he happened to not be taught English, he's condemned to penury forever. He has to live in these miserable conditions. He's not allowed to try to improve his life. That's mean. And it's the same with every single issue. That's why the slippery slope is actually just a historical law. It's a historical law of development. It's why Cthulhu always swims left. Abortion should be safe, legal, and rare. Has to become, after the baby is born, we take the mother aside and we have a conversation about what she wants to do. These are infinite moral demands. They're not really political. It's a moral, absolutist, imperialistic demand. So do they hate the family? Does the left hate the family? Yes, they do. Whether they'll really admit it or not, they can't not oppose the family and maintain any kind of consistency in their worldview. And if they persist in inconsistency, eventually the historical process will work itself out and will resolve the inconsistency. And they will be transformed into an active political project to dismantle the family. And lately this seems to kind of be happening more. Like I said, BLM had a stated goal of family abolition, and this isn't new on the left. And I think that's part of what's going on and what's at stake in this stuff with Roe v. Wade, for example. Abortion is anti-family, right? Obviously. Euphemistically, family planning in many parts of the world is seen as even meaning stuff like forced sterilization. And we've seen campaigns globally which are, family planning, forced sterilization campaigns and things like that. And so, we've seen stuff like this. And Roe in the United States is a kind of flashpoint politically, I think, for some of these reasons. And now we're seeing stuff like all these corporations are offering to fund your abortion, which is just sort of grotesque. They'll pay you to not have a family. They don't want you to have a family. Why? Because then you're more loyal to your company. You might take off when your family's sick or for your children's ball games, right? Abortion is cheaper than maternity leave because the general goal is totally isolated consumer workers, right? They do want you to live in a pod and eat bugs. You might say, well, but they need a labor force. Where do they think it's going to come from if they don't want us to reproduce? Well, third world immigration, obviously. That's obviously what they think they can do and what they are doing. So let's go ahead and pay you to sterilize yourselves, which interestingly is also happening in sort of another field and with another political issue. And again, on that issue, it's the political left that identifies with this kind of sterilization project. I saw even OkCupid is one of the companies that's paying you to get an abortion, which is funny because it's like, so our business model is hookup culture, and if you hook up and you get pregnant, whatever, we'll pay for you to have an abortion, and then you can just keep hooking up and using our product. Thinking more broadly, like in terms of managerial social control, the family also has to be understood as beyond the reach in some sense of the mechanisms of control, right? Families talk to each other, they interact, they bounce ideas off each other in a non-digitally mediated space, right? So we can't use algorithms to determine what they see and hear. It's an island of resistance to social control. It's a locus of uncontrollable socialization, right? They can't dominate that space, and so obviously they're going to view it as hostile, right? As something that needs to be destroyed for the purposes of social control. The parents could teach their kids to be moderate. They could be horrified at their child's drug use, at their, taking puberty blockers or trying to cut their boobs off or whatever. They're being sexualized, and then they might try to put a stop to it, right? We can't control the maternal or the paternal instinct, right? So even if you're some crazy lefty, when your child starts doing this stuff or whatever, that might trigger something in you and you'd be horrified by it. You might wind up with parents going to these PTA meetings and demanding that they pull the propaganda from the curriculum, right? That'd be terrible. That'd be a tremendous loss for the movement. And so it isn't surprising, I think, that we get these moral grotesqueries like Anna Navarro from The View talking about how tough it is to have a brother with this and a grandchild with that and a cousin like this, and saying on TV basically that maybe we should have aborted these people, saying that maybe we should have aborted my family members because it's tough, right? Tucker showed all these clips last night from MSNBC and CNN and stuff where they've been running segments talking about what a drain it is, what a burden it is on parents as individuals, on mothers, and a drain on our society to have kids. Economically and in terms of our sort of vital energy. It's just like mind-bogglingly evil anti-family propaganda. In some sense, I think that's what this like trend of surrogacy represents too, right? Let's outsource reproduction to the third world. It's really disgusting stuff, and I hope that people are paying attention. They want you to be alone and addicted to drugs and miserable and the end of your genetic line and just staring at the phone or whatever all day, working from home, shopping from home, ordering your hookup with an anonymous stranger that then if you're pregnant you can get an abortion, your company will pay for it. And by home, I mean obviously your one-bedroom apartment. Nobody can own a home anymore. You can't buy a home. But yeah, this is the kind of stuff that I've been sort of thinking about lately in relation to Roe v. Wade and stuff like that, and it's disconcerting, or it's sort of a not very pleasant situation in the history of our culture and things like that. But I hope that was somewhat interesting. The last one got some positive feedback, so I figured I'd do another. The next episode will probably be back to Sloterdijk, and then maybe I'll do another one of these or something. I might try to also start just picking up a different book, a political theory book, or I do want to start doing some of the classics too, and I could do them very easily because I have a lot of familiarity, like with Plato's Republic or something like that. I don't think I would really need to prep to basically do what I've been doing with Sloterdijk and go through sort of book by book and explain things. But yeah, that's you can let me know what you think about any of that. But like, comment, subscribe, etc. Remember, don't simply react, but think culture.